There was a time when saying the same thing over and over again was considered the hallmark of good leadership. Message discipline, they called it. Repeat the slogan, say the vision, embed the phrase until it stuck. The logic was simple. Repetition builds retention. But something has changed, or maybe it's us who've changed. We're no longer passive consumers of messages. We're message critics, pattern recognizers. Our mental spam filters are always on. In a world where messages are flying at us all day by politicians, brands, influencers, organizations, we've learned to tune things out faster than ever. Repetition doesn't always build retention anymore. Sometimes it just builds fatigue. This idea of flooding the zone, of being louder, more visible, more persistent, came to us from the world of marketing. And in that context, it served a real and measurable purpose. Repetition and saturation worked to build product awareness, break through noise, and leave impressions that could lead to recognition or sales. But leadership is a different landscape. It demands something more textured than impressions and conversions. People aren't algorithms, and change doesn't come from visibility alone. What works in a media campaign doesn't automatically translate to a boardroom, a classroom, or a community meeting. Leadership communication requires resonance, trust, and human connection, things that aren't built through volume alone. In fact, repeating a message that has lost its edge or one that never had it at all can do more harm than good. A message that once carried weight becomes a slogan, and a slogan, when overused, becomes hollow, the shell of something meaningful, echoing through meetings and memos until no one really hears it anymore, not because they disagree, but because they already stopped listening. Repetition turns nuance into noise. When something is said often enough, people stop interrogating what it means. It becomes shorthand. We start to say the slogan instead of doing the work of real communication, and eventually the slogan is the message. But slogans are brittle. They can't carry tension, they can't evolve, they can't invite, and they rarely, if ever, inspire change. Leaders who rely too heavily on repetition may find that they're not building clarity, they're building caricature. The message gets reduced to the meme version of itself, easy to share, but hard to trust. We've developed a kind of fluency, an ability to sense when someone is trying to manage us instead of communicating with us. The overly polished speech, the branded phrasing, the messaging that feels a little too airtight. We feel it. Even if we can't name it, we know it's there. It's the social equivalent of reading someone's tone before they even speak a word. People don't reject strategy. They reject being reduced to a target. When leaders approach communication like a chessboard, planning moves, anticipating counters, we don't feel clarity. We feel contained. And the message, no matter how brilliant, arrives prepackaged in suspicion. What we want is something with fingerprints still on it, something that feels alive, unfinished, real, not sloppy, not vague, but human. Communication that honors the complexity of the people it's meant to reach. And in a world of clickbait and slogans, even sincerity can be weaponized. The language of authenticity has become part of the toolkit, polished into sound bites, rehearsed into TED-worthy cadences, and dressed up to feel unrehearsed. But this doesn't mean sincerity is lost. Sincerity alone isn't enough. Audiences today aren't just asking if a leader is being sincere, they're asking whether that sincerity is being performed. If the vulnerability is real or strategic, if the warmth is instinctive or market tested. The challenge for leaders is not to appear sincere, but to communicate in ways that resist manipulation altogether. To speak plainly, but not carelessly. To risk transparency without turning it into a tactic. Because in a world that's trained to spot spin, even the truth has to earn its way in. So, what actually holds attention? One makes a message rise above the noise instead of dissolve into it. The first is resonance, because it enters the emotional space where people already live. Resonance happens when someone hears a message and thinks, that's exactly it. That's what I've been trying to name. Leaders who communicate with resonance are translating what people have felt but haven't yet articulated. It takes empathy, not just eloquence. The second thing that holds attention is novelty. Not simply for novelty's sake, but for what it reveals. You see, the brain perks up when it hears something unexpected. But if that surprise doesn't lead to depth, it's quickly discarded. Novelty isn't a gimmick. It's a doorway. Vision is another way to hold people's attention. Because people are desperate for a picture of what could be. But vision is hard. It's easy to spout aspirations. It's harder to tell the truth about the gap between now and what's to come. And the best visions don't center the leader. They center the people who will live in the future being imagined. The final way to hold attention is through relevance. Because a message that doesn't connect with people's lives will eventually feel like it's an interruption. But relevance isn't about chasing trends. It's about anchoring the message in a context your audience actually cares about. And underneath it all, attention. Real attention. Not clicks, not likes, not eyeballs, but focus. Presence. The kind of attention people offer when they feel something meaningful is happening. And that kind of attention is sacred. It is not owned. It is earned. In a distracted, oversaturated world, the fact that someone is listening to you, really listening, is not a small thing. It's a gift. Leaders forget this. They fall in love with the sound of their own voices. They begin to assume that because they hold a position of authority, because they have the final say, the mic, the meeting, or the mandate, they're entitled to people's attention. That having a platform is the same as having permission. But it's not. And in confusing the two, they squander the very thing that they were given, someone's attention. Now, you don't need to be louder. You need to be clearer. You don't need to repeat yourself. You need to be remembered. And those are not the same thing. So instead of flooding the zone with slogans, simplify the message without making it shallow. Instead of chasing virality, build a vision people can live into. Instead of assuming you're being heard, earn the hearing. Say what needs to be said and let the silence after do its work. Because in the end, leadership isn't about being the voice that dominates the room. It's about being the one people remember because you spoke with clarity, care, and courage when it mattered the most. Now, if that kind of communication resonates with you, clear, human, built for impact, Fathom It can help. We work with leaders and teams and organizations to sharpen how they communicate when it matters the most. If you've got a message that needs to land, let's talk.